Ignatius, as he had planned, does go on pilgrimage to Jerusalem, returns, and begins the studies in Barcelona, which will eventually lead him to the University of Paris and to ordination as a priest. And now a life of holiness is underway. Already other people are beginning to come to him to learn from him and gain from his spiritual wisdom. And ultimately, this will lead to the founding of his community. Now let's ask this question. What if that day Ignatius' eyes had not been opened a little? Enough to understand the spiritual, to be aware of the spiritual experience going on in his head, his thoughts about living in different ways, and the corresponding stirrings of the heart. Able then to work with it until he could understand what was of God and not of God in those stirrings in his thoughts and in his heart, and then to take action accordingly, rejecting what he firmly knew now not to be of God, so that it could never lead him astray. In fact, he'll never take a single step to return to that former way of life, and firmly embracing and putting into practice what he now knows is where God is leading in his life. What would have been different if that had never happened? Well, obviously, the life of sanctity that we know would certainly not have happened as it did, and in all likelihood, may never have happened at all. What would have been different if his eyes hadn't been opened a little that way, and then to be aware of, understand, and then take action accordingly regarding the spiritual experience in his thoughts and in his heart? What would have been different in the life of his university companions, St. Francis Xavier, St. Pierre Favre, and so many others down the line? Among many other things that would have been different, you and I would not be sharing this conversation right now. The ripples of grace that have gone out into the life and into the church and into the world because one man's eyes were opened spiritually a little, enough to become aware of, understand, and take action accordingly regarding the spiritual experience in his thoughts and in his heart. Those ripples continue to go out and in some ways are more widespread today than ever before. That's the grace that we're seeking when we learn his rules for discernment.